G'day, Prashant. It's lovely to have you with us today. We always love to start off our chats with finding out a little bit more about our guests. So could you tell us a little bit what it was that prompted you to go vegan?
Sure. Thanks so much for having me. Really, really appreciate it. Love the work you folks are doing at Vegan FDA. So my name is Prashant Kumbhat. I'm the founder of Get Vegan Grub. Um, I was raised as a Jain. So Jainism is a religion which has its roots, or I guess it was founded around the same time as Buddhism. And both religions, at the core of the very religions is ahimsa, which is essentially non-violence. Um, so as a religion, what Jainism preaches you to do is, try to avoid mental or physical violence towards any living beings, right? So it's not just it's not just killing an animal for a meal, but it's also the lifelong torment that you put an animal through up until the point where you slaughter them for meat. So you're supposed to avoid all of that. Now, it's a very, very broad definition, encompasses a lot of things, but it also provides the basis of how we kind of were raised in our household. So we were raised vegetarian. Again, not perfect because we were all oblivious to the cruelty of the dairy industry. But I think it's one of those cultural things where dairy is such a huge part of your diet, your culture, that you kind of don't get to see, how milk is made and, what all really goes into it. So, I've been a vegetarian all my life, never ever had meat. And 4 years ago, my wife and I, we went to a Jain conference, and the moderator there was talking about, Jainism. He spoke about the work that PETA is doing. He showed some of their material in terms of some of their slideshows, just data on the dairy industry. And he said, the exact same thing, which really resonated with my wife and I. And, what he said was that, don't just think of, um, violence as physical violence. Think of it as the mental trauma that you put beings through, knowingly or unknowingly, because of what you eat or because of what you wear. And which is why every Jain should actually be a vegan as well. So that conference took about 3 days. We came home, and we just went vegan cold turkey overnight. Took all of our veggie stuff, gave it away to friends, and then all we were left was with pretty much an empty fridge because we weren't really consuming vegan cheese back in that day. But yeah, that was our journey. Cold turkey overnight, and we're so glad that we did it.
It's brilliant.
Yeah, and that was kind of uh, the impetus for starting Get Vegan Grub as well. Uh, I tried starting something similar with a few friends of mine in the U.S., but I think the food regulations in the U.S. were a little too stringent and strict. So when I came to the UK, I saw, this was about 3 years ago, saw this huge, huge market for vegan food. And what was really cool about the market was that there were not just restaurants and cafes that were doing it, but there were also home-based businesses that were basically, out in stalls, out in vans, cooking and selling food from home on Instagram and Facebook. Um, so that's kind of how the first version of Get Vegan Grub sort of came about, which was it was an app for home-based businesses to essentially sell their vegan food online. Um, and yeah, and that was I think that was about 2 years ago, and that's kind of how I got started off on the journey.
Brilliant.
That's so cool. I love your story, and you're so right about the mental trauma and everything. That isn't. It should be. Of course, automatically considered, but we don't. So many of us don't as a rule. And we'll go into to Get Vegan Grub exactly what it is and how it works. But one thing, when we're finding about what you do and about Get Vegan Grub as an app, was, you know, a lot of us vegans at one stage or another, you know, especially we're sort of coming up around the same time as you as well, sort of 4 or 5 years in living the vegan lifestyle. And, you know, all of us, we see something at some stage, a gap in the market or something that's missing that you think, I wish we had this. I wish this was easier for vegans. I wish that was easier for vegans. And yet we don't do anything about it. So what was it that inspired you and sort of gave you the drive to be like, you know what, I am going to do something about this. There's a need here and I'm going to fill it.
Yeah, no. So I think that's a great question. So one of the first things that I saw was, so by the way, you have to know one thing: Get Vegan Grub was not always called Get Vegan Grub. Uh, the first iteration of the platform or the website was called Indie Hob, as an independent hob. But for some reason, that name really didn't stick. But anyways, Indie Hob was, you know, essentially a platform for home-based chefs to. My cat wants to say hi. Was for home-based chefs to basically organize themselves and have, you know, like a formal platform to sell their food on. So the first gap that I had seen in the market was there was no website that was actually doing this, right? You had all of these home-based chefs that were making amazing vegan food, but they were basically just using social media to sell it. So, you know, you would have to ping somebody and say, hey, you know, can I take a look at your menu? And, you know, somebody would send over the menu and then, you know, what are the allergens in here? You know, how do I pay you? Do I pay you cash? Can I, you know, give you my credit card information? How are you going to deliver it? When can I come and pick it up? So it was a very lengthy and long conversation that would happen. So the first, you know, version of Get Vegan Grub, which was Indie Hob, was to address that particular gap in the market. And, you know, honestly, I saw, you know, hundreds of people within like 4 or 5 miles of Manchester city center doing like really brilliant stuff with vegan food. So I thought, you know, why not make it easier for people to find vegan food, and B, you know, it's about time that vegan food kind of had its own showcasing, right? You shouldn't have to be a vegan or somebody who's vegan curious or a flexitarian who wants to make a better choice for food and have to scroll down this entire menu of like 50 items to you know get to the 5 or 7 items that you can actually order from. A and B, you know, even today, I think there are a lot of people who are looking out for vegan options and they just don't know where to find them. You know, uh, like I said, not all places are going to be exclusively vegan. So, you know, vegan food just kind of tends to get lost in the entire mix of what people have to offer. So that was the initial gap that we saw in the market. We did that for about a year. Our timing was absolutely terrible because we went live with Indie Hub 2 or 3 months before the pandemic hit us. So it was not the best time to get started, but you know, nonetheless, we kind of pushed on. And then I think halfway through the pandemic, I approached a couple of cafes and restaurants, and I just asked them, you know, hey, we have this platform. It's for home-based businesses, but we would love for you guys to kind of do a pilot and see if you know, it can work with you. And again, you know, the whole idea is to showcase vegan food and promote vegan food. So we did that. It worked, you know, fairly well for them. We made a couple more adjustments, got some feedback, and realized that people really didn't know what Indie Hob meant. So that's when we changed the name to Get Vegan Grub, and just went with it.
Love it. It's so great how you guys are backing those innovators, you know, those innovators in the home kitchen, and then you yourself had to innovate when the pandemic came up. And it's yeah, we love seeing that. And for us recently, we went on holiday and we have that problem of we want to order something and you're going through the menu and yeah, all you see is dead things, lactation from
can't have.
dead
Yeah,
things.
Can't have this,
Yeah.
can't have that.
And yeah, it's just so nice when you can log on to something and just see real food, you know, things that aren't well, yeah,
To be
what we
spoiled for
could,
choice
yeah.
is so nice.
Yeah.
So nice.
But
And you know, more often than not, right? It's also vegetarian food that's disguised to be vegan, but when you actually order it, Then they're like, oh yes, yeah, we'll give you the burger with the bun and the patty, but we'll have to take out the cheese from it. So I'm like, at that point, it's not really a burger, is it?
No, but it's one of
Yeah.
our personal rules is that now when we go out somewhere and they say, oh, we can veganize this by taking out, say, the chicken from a risotto, there's no point in ordering most of these meals because they are based on their meat or their dairy components. And so when they try and veganize them, it's often not worth having, unless it's specifically designed that way. But and we've also been stung quite a few times when you've tried to order something vegan, and because it has to go through a sub menu and a sub menu and a sub menu, somebody misses a link in the chain, and you end up with like how arriving at your door, not the correct kind of happy one munching away on grass, like. But
Yeah.
you guys sort of fill that role that Uber and companies like Deliveroo also use. So how do you differ from them, and why is there such a need to have a vegan specific in this sort of area?
That's a great question. So the way that we position ourselves is we are the ethical alternative to Deliveroo, Just Eat, and Uber Eats. These are like the three major big platforms in the UK. There's a reason why we're ethical. Obviously, it's in our name, Get Vegan Grub. So there's no animal cruelty involved whatsoever. We'll take, even if you are a restaurant that has meat options, we're only ever going to take the vegan portion of that menu and put it up on our site. So we're ethical from that perspective. We're also ethical, in the way that we've modeled our business, and that's to basically it's been modeled around the definition of veganism, right? Uh, Now, this is slightly long as I describe it, but I think it's definitely worth taking the time to kind of see how we define veganism for ourselves, and how that impacts the way that we do business, right? So the definition of veganism by the Vegan Society is basically avoiding animal cruelty, as much as we can. So what we've done is we've basically overlaid the definition of genism on top of that, which is basically to avoid physical and mental trauma to all living beings. So for us, animals are not just, animals like cows, pigs, or chickens, but we're also taking the human animal, which is all of us, into consideration. So, you guys have interviewed Jordi Kasamajina, right?
Yes.
So he wrote this piece on intersectionality in veganism, which I think is just absolutely mind blowing, and I think Jordy's hands down probably one of the best, um, speakers when it comes to talking about veganism and promoting veganism and really ethical veganism. So his quote, it's a very long quote. I'll send you folks a picture, a photograph of that. Feel free to show that when you're doing this in post edit. But in a nutshell, what he's saying is, vegans are fighting for social justice for animals, and it's also okay for us to fight for social justice for the human animal. And it's not exclusionary, and in fact it basically strengthens the whole purpose, the whole meaning of veganism and what is that we're trying to do. So essentially that article kind of really put all of these myriad random thoughts that I had in my head into a very, very clean framework of how to think about veganism. So what we basically do is, in order to provide our services, we need to partner with other businesses to do so, right? So a very simple example is Vegan FDA is a website, right? It's a platform where people can interact, where you can post content, people can like it, people can share it, right? So you are basically, hosting your website on a specific platform. The recording software that you might be using, the hardware that you might be using, you have paid a company money to get that and use it. So so what we're essentially doing at Get Vegan Grub is every part of our offering where we need to pay money to another company to make sure that people can use our services, we're making sure that these companies are ethically aligned as well, right? Unfortunately, not all companies can be vegan like you and I, right? But what we look for are certain markers, like do they believe in equal pay? Do they believe in LGBTQ rights, right? What is their take on modern slavery? What is their take on racism? Uh, you know, how are their employees, former and current, reviewing them? And there are a lot of websites where you can get that information, right? How do they treat their staff and their employees, especially when it comes to manual labor? How are these companies treating these individuals? And what sort of a work environment are they promoting? Is it a good work environment? Do they have good labor practices, good labor wages, good protections in place for the most vulnerable people who are working for them? And that's how we choose the companies that we partner with, right? So it's not a perfect system, because obviously we can't spend a lot of time doing a lot of this kind of research, but we do as much as we can, and we try to partner with companies that kind of align with our morals and ethics. um, so I'll give you an example, and you've all heard of Amazon, right? The e-commerce giant that's basically shipping boxes worldwide. But what people don't know about Amazon is they have a very, very profitable wing called AWS, Amazon Web Services, right? And what AWS allows you to do is basically it allows you to host websites, any services like that you need in terms of storing videos, storing photographs, sending emails. They provide all of these services in a very, very integrated fashion. And because of their size, they're super inexpensive as well, right? So we deliberately made a choice not to go with Amazon or any of our partners that work on Amazon. Because I'm sure you've heard Amazon as a company has been embroiled in labor controversies for the last several years. The way that they've taken care of their staff, especially during the pandemic, has been absolutely awful. Right, their hire and fire practices have been really, really bad, and they have a very, very harsh anti-union stance, which makes for very little in terms of protecting the most vulnerable workers. So we made a very clear decision: we would never ever be on AWS, and we would not partner with anybody who is providing a service that's hosted on AWS as well. So I know it's very, very deep, and a lot of people don't think about technology in that way. But from our standpoint, if we're paying money to somebody that's going to fuel their growth, we want to make sure that that money is being put to good use. Right?
Absolutely. I love that. I
Yeah,
love that you take that stance and that you do go the extra mile. I mean, I just love that it's that whole chain, the whole way along. We were sort of mentioning before, when you sort of think of the beginning and the end when you get your product, and you don't think about all the little things that happen that from getting to A to B along the way. And it's what we love about what you're doing with Get Vegan Grub, is that you really do try and take the utmost care with that, and like you're saying, do cause the least harm as much as we feasibly possibly can, which is great. I love that.
yeah.
I think
Yeah, it's like veganism is a countercultural movement, right? Like you're fighting, systems of oppression out here. So there's absolutely, no reason why, as a consumer or a business, you should shy away from doing that when you're trying to, provide your services to others, or when you're subscribing to services for your own personal benefit. I think, this is going to make me wildly unpopular as I say it, but people need to think, and they need to do their research, when they sign themselves up to promote themselves, or, even when they sign up for any such services online. Unless you live in complete isolation and you don't follow the news at all, there's absolutely no way you would not have heard of larger corporations doing some really, really ridiculous things out there as far as their labor practices are concerned. So if you can't be on the streets protesting, I think one way to fight these companies is to let them know that they're not going to get your business because you feel what they're doing is unethical, and support smaller businesses. Instead, there are so many alternatives in the market today. Give them a chance to grow. And every little action in my mind can really make that happen.
Yeah, it's fantastic. I love how you brought up as well before about Geordie.
I was
Geordie
thinking about
Gasmanjana.
Geordie the whole time
Yeah.
as well.
I have to give a shameless plug right now. If you haven't seen it already, we've done a vegan activist series episode with Geordie, and so go watch it if you haven't already, because he's a fantastic advocate. And it's bringing that whole bringing it all together, and like what you're doing with Get Vegan Grub. I really feel that when we fight on all these minor issues within our life and our everyday actions, that's when we become stronger advocates. And like we see that with Geordie in how he won the case to become ethical veganism as a established philosophical belief in the UK. He won that because he had every little detail down to an art of understand whether it was ethical and vegan for him to consume. Whether that was the power for his razor, the shoes that he wore, and the food that he eats. He had everything down, and it made him such a powerful advocate. And so, for all our listeners and stuff like that, if you're in the UK, this is your option now to go forward and get that delicious food that you're after, but then not be supporting that cruelty in between. Because from what I understand and from discussions that we've had previously, some of these other quick and easy delivery services, they really don't offer their employees anything, really. A lot of these people are doing it off the shirt of their own back, and it's sad to see that. And it's because
in other ways, don't they?
It's just because people want convenience. When there's convenience, there's obviously a level. Generally, whenever there's convenience, there's a level of suffering in between that and like the original product. So it's great to see you guys are sort of eliminating that as much as possible, and bringing it back to being vegan.
No, it's important, and I'm glad you kind of went towards the delivery bit of it, because delivery as an industry today, and this is not just the UK, this is world over. Pretty much every country on this planet is structured the same way. Unless they have like really, really strict laws and regulations in place to, prevent labor exploitation. But the way that the delivery industry works at large is you have these big corporations that have set a standard, and this is very near and dear to me, because before we started delivery on Get Vegan Grub, what I did was I went undercover, and I joined these online forums on delivery riders and drivers and their experiences, right? So you would have these forums on Facebook, and Reddit and these kind of forums, where basically people would talk about their experiences working with these companies, right? So what's my experience working with Deliveroo, Uber Eats, or Uber as a driver. And people would post their daily earnings. People would talk about their experience with customer service as a rider. People would talk about all the obstacles that they had to get through to get a job, and all the obstacles they had to get through if they were fired, and how they would have to reappeal so they could get a job with these companies again. Right. So it's really bad what's happening out there, because, I would say 90 to 95% of the people who are employed in the rider or the driver industry are all self-employed. Right. Which means they have zero protection when it comes to, sick days, injuries. If you're injured, for example, you break your leg and you are a rider on a cycle, there's no protection in place for you. You don't get a sick day. You don't get paid for any of your sick days, or you don't get paid for any of the days that you're injured. You're on your own. So it's really bad. You pay for insurance out of your own pocket. You don't get any pension fund contributions, right? And basically, if you're fired from your job for whatever reason, there's really no way for you to appeal and say, hey, can you give me a reason as to why I was fired? There's absolutely no way for people to do that. So that's why you've seen all of these protests erupt all over the UK, even all over the US. I haven't followed up, other parts of the world, but, there have been protests, religiously week over week, month over month. And these people are asking for, better working conditions and better pay. But the thing is that, the big corporations that are really dominating the space don't want to change. And one example of that is what happened in Spain. So good news out of Spain, finally. One of the judges ruled, or I think it was a law that was passed by the lawmakers, to say that anybody who is working as self-employed by these apps, right, by the food delivery apps or the taxi apps, you can no longer be self-employed. You will have to be an employee of these corporations. Right. So this is, again, a very, very simple explanation of the actual law that's been put into place, but it's a huge win, because now when you're working on the app, you will have insurance coverage, you will get pension contributions, right, which is critical for these workers. But one of the companies, and it shouldn't be a surprise to anybody, Deliveroo pulled out of Spain around about the time when this law was enacted. So, it really makes you think, how some of these companies are operating, the way that they're structured, and the lengths that they will go to prevent such laws from ever, taking a foothold in certain countries. Last year, as an example, Instacart, Lyft, and Uber in the US, in the most progressive state, California, they spent $200 million. Imagine the zeros in there, right? $200 million in campaigning for a law to be passed that would allow their workforce or their self-employed riders and drivers to remain self-employed drivers and riders. 200 million, like, imagine all the good they can do with that kind of money.
It's I think I don't know if they could even rack up that much insurance damage anyway to cost them 200 million in the first place. It is bizarre when you see some of the lobbying in various industries and what they put money into try and stop. It's bizarre. But you even you said how going into the forums and stuff to see some of this stuff. I've actually seen it spill out, on platforms like TikTok, YouTube, even on Facebook videos and stuff like that. These stories spilling out on the things that these people are going through. And yeah, here's my night in the cab, they're filming themselves on the phone, and it's yeah, the stuff people have to put up with, it's just terrible. And
there's no protection. There's absolutely zero protection.
no.
And so that's really what's driven the delivery industry into an absolute mess, I would say. And until the laws don't catch up, and quite frankly, the companies are not to blame, themselves alone, right? It's the laws need to catch up with them. That's number one. And number two, like I mentioned before, consumers and businesses need to stand up as well. They need to go back to these companies and say, hey, what's with all of these protests? Why aren't people being paid well? You're taking these huge commissions and cuts, away from us. Why aren't you paying, these people well? And, quite frankly, these people won't have billion-dollar valuations or, the unicorn status, if it weren't for the delivery riders and drivers that they have today. So yeah, and that it's something to think through. And I think there's a lot of information out there. There are a lot of news that have been that have very, very good coverage of all of these protests. I think people need to really make that choice for themselves and stand up and do the right thing there.
Definitely.
I
Well,
mean,
thank you for
I know
leading the
it's a lot to
way.
process. Yeah, it's a lot to process, but I really want to take this opportunity and kind of highlight that it's just not about the food. You really need to take a deep look at all the components. Like you said, Gareth, all the components that make up that delivery, that make up that food. and how it gets to you. That's it's a big part of what folks need to really focus on now.
Absolutely. I think it's all of us as vegans, we all want to do better. That's why we live the way we do, and once you know better, you do better. And we're all learning in every bit that we can keep learning, to show, that every little bit more value that we can be to do better, and just add that more into the chain.
Well, being vegan is almost, I always like to think of it as it's an evolution. We're constantly learning something new. We're constantly learning about a different element we didn't know about before. And so I hope all of our listeners to this today are starting to think about, where their next delivery is going to be coming from, and Get Vegan Grub. This is, you're supporting, you're supporting all animals, the human animals and the non-human animals, because they're not on the menu, so that's fantastic. But
I would love to know. Sorry, I was thinking to listen to Prashant. With obviously we're making it easier for vegans to get vegan grub, and like you're saying, that goes for vegan and vegetarian/vegan restaurants as well. But I would think, I don't know if you found this as well, but surely, for me, if I'm a non-vegan as such restaurant or eatery that's got like 1 or 2 vegan dishes on the menu, and then I find that there is a totally vegan delivery food delivery business out there that can get my food out to more people, surely that would make businesses also think, oh, perhaps I should be, I'm missing out here, maybe I need to put 3, 4, 5 dishes, so that people can, I can get my food out to people with Get Vegan Grub as well. Would you think that would be something that you're seeing?
It's not something that we've seen so far, but that's also one of the reasons why the platform exists as it does. Get Vegan Grub. So when we approach restaurants that don't have a lot of vegan options, we give them an opportunity to think about, hey, perhaps expand the menu. That's always going to be good for you. Vegans are a growing demographic, and I think more people today, even if they aren't full-time vegans, or even if they're like part-time plant-based individuals, I think they're always looking at having and consuming more vegan options. So I think it's a great thing for restaurants to do, is to reflect on their vegan menus, and see if they can expand that range.
Definitely.
It's definitely a conversation that we've had in the past. And we're hoping that it inspires people to really think through their vegan offering, because it is a growing market, and you just can't afford to ignore us anymore.
Absolutely. We talk a lot, don't we, about that whole vegan vote when you're dining out with vegans and non-vegans, and they'd be silly not to.
It's one thing that is actually we found quite effective is hospitality activism as well, and going into places, and also having that ammunition to sort of say, there's delivery services out there that you're not on yet. Do you have a vegan option? Do you want to get onto this delivery app? Like, you can go out there and just ask people instant questions, about their menu, and there's so much that you can do. Somebody I can recommend people look into is Meredith Marine with Vegan Hospitality, and we're graduates of a vegan hospitality course. And it's fantastic what you can do and the way you can get people thinking about what's going on their menus, because if they're not serving vegan options, they are burning money. There's no reason not to have vegan on the menu, because most of the time, the case is you've already got the vegetables, you've got most of the things. You might not have the vegan cheese or the vegan meats, but any vegan can tell you don't have to have those things for a wonderful plant-based meal. We had spaghetti with the chili paste in it before, recommended by Matt Pritchard, and that was fantastic. It was just chili paste and pasta. So you don't need anything too fancy, but you can get the fancy stuff on here, I will say. But I understand you are actually working on some other exciting projects at the moment, something to do with creating a vegan version of paneer.
Yes, that is in the works. What we've done is we've basically taken paneer and we're trying to veganize it by creating veneer. So it's a great way for restaurants to basically adopt a new ingredient. It'll help them veganize existing vegetarian dishes. That's number one. And number two, perhaps they can even substitute that in place of, just put that in place of dairy paneer, and make a cruelty-free choice and offer that to their customers. So we have a prototype ready. It's obviously 100% plant-based. There are no artificial ingredients. It's a very, very simple ingredient list. I know that's what a lot of vegans are looking at these days, is a simple ingredient list. So we have that as well. It's we use sustainable crops. It's an eco-friendly process. It's an eco-friendly crop, which means that, as far as carbon emissions are concerned, we're slashing them by, wow, 1/30th that of dairy paneer, right? Which
Wow.
is just slashing a lot of carbon emissions right there. We use, our crop uses less water, it uses lesser land. So it's just good for everybody. Yeah, it's a healthier product, because it's plant-based. So obviously there is zero cholesterol. There's lesser saturated fats, which is always good. And yeah, what we've done so far is we've created a prototype. We've gotten it tested by a lot of the chefs and some of the food bloggers that follow us on Get Vegan Grub. So that was a good network to reach out to. We've gotten some really positive feedback so far. Next step is essentially to kind of continue refining our product based on some of the feedback that we received. And we're also approaching incubators and angel investors to see if they'd be interested in kind of funding our journey. And it really aligns with what we're trying to do with Get Vegan Grub. It's not just an inexpensive way for businesses to sell food, but we're also now going to provide them an alt protein that they can use to perhaps create a whole new range of vegan dishes, and essentially improve their offering to vegans.
That's so cool. I love
Fantastic. Yeah.
that. I love that. It's brilliant. I
Yeah,
remember.
I wish I could send you folks a sample. I just don't think it's going to make it all the way to New Zealand.
Maybe not,
No.
especially at the moment. We're not having too much mail our way at the moment, but yeah, that's awesome. I mean, I was vegetarian for years, and paneer was my go-to. And we noticed that recently when we went away and we were traveling, we were on holiday.
Actually, that was one of the stuff ups that we had from.
It was,
we
wasn't it?
we ate a lot of Indian cuisine whilst we we're on the road, and there's this one place that was absolutely fantastic. They had a huge vegan and vegetarian menu, and they had a vegan version of it, but then they had a paneer version, and unfortunately they sent the paneer version. Luckily, the guy
They
phoned
called
up.
me, didn't it? Which was
Yeah,
great.
it's a minute before I start tucking into this thing that looked like tofu, and it was actually paneer. And he's like, don't eat that. It's paneer. So
yeah, so often I was looking at the menu thinking, oh yeah, I used to love paneer, I can't have that now. So that's brilliant. I think that's genius. It works so well together. So well, keep us posted on that. That will be be brilliant. I really look forward to seeing where you go to next. And as you said, unfortunately for us, 12,000 kilometers is a little bit far to get our vegan grub out to us from you guys. But where can our audience go to get vegan grub?
Just go on to getvegangrub.com. What we're doing is, we obviously have a website which is mobile ready as well. So you can just pick up your phone, go to any browser, go to getvegangrub.com, or you can download our apps. What we've also done is we've added a news section, which is initially why I reached out to the both of you. So what we're doing in the news section is we're basically aggregating news from, Vegan FTA, Jane and Chained, plant-based news, veg news. We've got Vegonomist. We've got the Vegan Review. There are a bunch of other websites, and the whole idea is to have people be more knowledgeable about what's going on in the vegan verse, right? So whether you're plant-based, whether you're hardcore vegan, whether you're ethical vegan, whether you're an activist, you can get all of the news out there. It's very, very easy. I always tell people it's not just enough to be an ally, but it's important that you are an informed ally. So, whether or not you find food on our platform that you like, that's fine. Whether or not you find restaurants that you like, that's also fine. Download the app, get the news. You can get news from all over the world. It's really, really easy. And it's, I think, the easiest way for you to kind of see what some of these other news outlets are doing and all the innovation that's really taking place. And, there are a lot of facts and figures out there that can really help you convince, people who aren't vegan to, adopt a more plant-based lifestyle. Because I see a lot of these arguments on the internet, and I think people are just going at it with each other, and there's very little facts, figures, and informed talk that's really happening. So I think this is a great way for people to kind of get that information out there. But yeah, and if you're a consumer, if you're a customer, so you can support us in different ways. Just talk to the restaurants that you like. Let them know that there's an app out there where they can get ethical delivery services for their vegan grub. More than happy to talk to them. Yeah.
Brilliant.
Absolutely.
So, and also just to double check, so you guys are just primarily based in the UK though at the moment for actual food services?
Yeah, we had plans for a national rollout. Again, we were planning that in the middle of the pandemic, and it got really, really difficult. And I'll be honest, it's we're right now we're based in Manchester, which is where our operations hub is. But it's really difficult to go out to another city and enlist businesses there. It takes a lot of on ground effort and capital that we just don't have at this stage. So for the moment we're based out of Manchester. We have a couple businesses that have signed up who are in London. But for the time being, we're focusing on Manchester and growing our business.
Lovely. Well,
awesome. Lucky Manchester.
yeah.
That's all I can say.
But I really encourage all of our vegans there to grab the app, even if you're just going to read the news on it.
Yes, one-stop news shop as well. It's great.
But if you're in the UK there, give some of this hospitality activism a bit of a go and see if you can get your local area interested in it as well, because it'll be fantastic to help get vegan grub out there even more, which is better for the animals, human and non-human. So that will be fantastic. And I can't help but think, as you're describing it more, it's a perfect tool to have there when you're the veto vote, between your group of friends. You're going to go find something to eat, oh, well, I can find what vegan food's on here, oh, did you happen to see this news story? You've got the perfect weapon in your pocket there.
Exactly.
So it's a fantastic one, even just for that. So we can't thank you enough, and we love being partnered with you on the app there and having our stuff out there, because collaboration is key to this movement. It's fantastic to see you working with so many different people on so many different levels to make that happen.
Thank you for all that you're doing, and to all our followers, go and support Prashant and Get Vegan Grub, and we look forward to seeing you grow because we know you well. Absolutely.
Thank you. Really, really appreciate it. And again, love the work that you folks are doing. It's very critical for the animals and for progressing the human species. So thank you.